You know the story of Esther? Do you mind if I told it to you? Those of you who know it, do you mind if I told it again? Is that all right? Okay. So the story of Esther takes place in about 400 BC in the eastern part of the Persian Empire. There were 4 capitals in the Persian Empire. One of them was the city of Susa, which is where this takes place. The king, which is commonly known as King Xerxes, but it's given a different name in this story. This is like historical fiction, all right? And it's very hyperbolized. They talk about feasts that last like 6 months, and they talk about beautification sessions that last 2 years. So it's a little bit of hyperbole, okay? Because I know we don't all take that long to get ourselves ready for church. So the story of Esther begins with King Xerxes, or the king in the story. He gets rid of his queen because the queen will not come when she is called, right? And he's kind of a simple king. He's a simple person, and so he's kind of tricked by his courtiers, his assistants, to say, if you let the queen get away with this, Queen Vashti is her name, if you let the queen get away with this now, there's no end to your trouble. I mean, if you let her not come when she's called now, the whole empire is going to crumble, because no woman is ever going to obey their husband ever again. So you should make it the law of the land that all wives must be obedient to their husbands. And the king says, yeah, you're right, I should do this right now. So he writes out a proclamation, and there it is. Right? And Queen Vashti is disposed. Now you need a replacement for Queen Vashti, which is where Esther comes in. They call all the beautiful women of all the land, and these beautiful women come for a year, most likely against their will, most likely they didn't have anything to say about it, but they go to beautification school for a year, for a moment with the king, where they have to, quote, please the king. They have to make the king happy. And Esther is chosen. Now, Esther is Jewish. She's part of the Jewish diaspora, right? Because a couple hundred years earlier, the Jews were taken out of their native land into Babylon, into captivity. And now they've been scattered throughout the empire. And Esther is part of the Jewish diaspora living in Susa. Now, Esther has an uncle named Mordecai. And Mordecai is kind of her benefactor. So Mordecai takes care of her. Mordecai goes with her to the castle, but Mordecai won't go in the castle, right? Because he's proper, he's Jewish, he wants to maintain the Jewish laws. The king does not know that Esther is Jewish. And Esther doesn't tell him. As a matter of fact, in the entirety of the book of Esther, God is not mentioned once. There's no mention of prayer, which is why years later, editors would come and add on to the book of Esther. They'd add in prayers from Esther and Mordecai to make it seem more religious. So, they go to the castle, and Esther is the queen. Mordecai stands outside the castle, and he hears 2 of the eunuchs conspire against the king. And he reports this to Esther. And Esther, like a good queen, tells her king that they're plotting against you. You need to do something about this. The king finds out who the eunuchs are, and off with their heads. Right? He foils the plot, the king is saved, and Esther is rewarded. But Mordecai is not rewarded. Right? Mordecai just goes along with his daily business. He doesn't really want a reward. He's just happy to be outside the castle. And he's looking after his niece, who is Queen Esther. Now, one of the assistants of the king gets risen up. His name is Haman. Phil, I think you pronounce it Haman. But I keep saying it Haman, so forgive me.
That's fine.
So Haman, because Phil knows more about this stuff than I do. Haman is the wicked assistant to the king. Haman is full of himself. He's all ego. Right? And he walks outside the castle, understanding that as an assistant to the king, as the top assistant to the king, everyone has to bow to him. Right? Everyone has to bow to him. Sure enough, one man outside the castle does not bow. Who is it? Mordecai does not bow to Haman. And Haman gets angry. And he gets ugly. He gets so angry that he says, this Mordecai must die. But not only Mordecai, but all of Mordecai's people must die. Genocide. Precursor to the Holocaust. This is right here. It has to right here in the story. Mordecai doesn't just stop with anger against one person for showing disrespect, but he wants to wipe out an entire race of people, an entire ethnicity, all over the empire. So, Mordecai is made aware of this plot. At the same time, the king can't sleep one night. And he goes through the history. He has the book of Chronicles read to him. And he finds out that Mordecai was the one who foiled the assassination plot. And he calls Haman in. He says, Haman, has Mordecai ever been rewarded for this great deed he did for the king? And Haman kind of stumbles around and says, no, not really. Because at the same time, Haman is building a gallows 50 cubits high, 75 feet high, upon which he will hang Mordecai. The king says to Haman, you must go and honor Mordecai. So Haman goes and puts a coat on Mordecai, parades him around the town, and says, this is the man whom the king wishes to honor. It slayed Haman. He was filled with rage. And he said, I must put my plan into effect. Now Mordecai went to Esther and said to Esther, Esther, look, the king doesn't know your story. You haven't told your story to the king. He doesn't know that you're Jewish. But you might want to tell him, because his assistant is going to wipe out our entire people. And you might be the only one who can save us. Now, after this whole Queen Vashti debacle, the king had a rule that said that the queen could not come into the king's presence unless the king called her. So Esther said, I can't just go to the king. I can't just make an appointment to say, hey, don't do this. I have to be called. Mordecai said, look, I know you're putting your life in danger. I know this is perilous for you. But maybe you were put at this place in this time for just this purpose. Perhaps you were put here for just this purpose, to save not only yourself, but your people as well. And so this incredibly brave woman, with the lives of so many people on her shoulders, and the burden of her untold story welling up in her throat, goes before the all-powerful king against all notion of safety, against all desired well-being, against her own self-protective interests. She does not wait for the golden scepter to be lowered to her. Instead, she goes into the king's presence and stands before the king. And there's this incredible moment of tension in the story that's written in between the lines. And the king waits and looks at Esther and finally lowers the golden scepter, allowing her to speak. It's this wonderful moment where this incredibly brave and courageous person comes to the king, fearing for her life and the lives of so many others. Understand that this could mean death for her, instant death. But she says, I am willing to do this if it means saving my people. So, she makes an arrangement to have lunch with Haman the next day. Let's have lunch, you, me, and Haman. Right? And then I will tell you what my request is. And this is where we pick up the reading that Phil read today. So they have this luncheon, and Haman is there. Haman is just rubbing his hands with glee at the gallows upon which he's going to hang Mordecai, and the justice that will be given to the people of Mordecai. When Esther says, if it pleases the king, let my life be given me. Let my life be given me. And the life of my people. She says this to the king in the presence of Haman. The king had no idea that she was Jewish. She maybe had never verbalized it before. But at that moment, she became whole. Because at that moment of telling her story to maybe people that did not want to hear it, in that moment of tremendous courage and honesty and bravery, she told her story. And wholeness was given to her. Because the king said, who is this person? Who is this wicked person that would do such a thing? Tell me who he is. And she says, this wicked and vile Haman. And guess who gets hung on the gallows? It's not Mordecai. Imagine what happens when powerful men believe these stories that women tell. You know, the king did not really ask, what proof do you have? He didn't kind of hem and haw about it. He was a simple man, but he believed her. And she was made whole. I think there's tremendous power in that for the church. Because I think the church, just like a lot of other institutions, can kind of sit back on the status quo and just say, it's the way it is, it's the way it's always been. Power is given to the powerful, and the powerless just have to keep yelling. And as a church, we can do better. As a church, I think we have a responsibility as a community of faith to bring other people into wholeness, to bring other people into a sense of dignity and humanity by hearing stories, by listening to them, by giving them a space where we can share things. Maya Angelou said that there is no agony like bearing an untold story inside of you. So many of us know that. And as a church, we can relieve people of that agony. As Christians, we are called to lift up each other's humanity and to offer other people dignity and respect and honor. We have the chance to do that. And I think when we do that, not only do we make other people whole, but we are made whole in return. I am made known of the ways in which I have failed my fellow human beings. I am made aware of the ways in which I have sought justice in ugly ways. And in doing that, I can atone for those things. Right? When I hear stories of the ways in which I have mistreated others, all of a sudden, that makes me more aware not only of my vulnerability, but of my deliverance by God, of my salvation that's found in Jesus. It's good for all of us to be more vulnerable and not to cling so hopefully to our strength and to our egos and to the things that would keep us from God. We have a chance to do something very brave each day by listening to one another, by believing one another, by saying to one another, tell me something you've never told anyone before, and I will listen. There's trust there. There's honor there. And I think it's in those moments that we are made known by God.